Hello everyone! In this video we are going to talk about social media, what it is, different types, and different applications of social media. We're also going to talk about how organizations use social media and the benefits and risks of social media for organizations. So one thing you should know is that social media stems from the idea of Web 2.0, which came about, in the late 1990s, 2000, around that time. Before that, Web 1.0 was in place, and that was more of a static web. So mostly different organizations were publishing content to users, but users themselves couldn't easily interact with one another or publish their own content online. So Web 2.0 paved the way for mass collaboration, user-generated content, peer production, and peer production is, a larger group of users co-creating content and services online, usually collaboratively. Web 2.0 also allows for resource and content sharing among users. And so to better understand how Web 2.0 is different from Web 1.0, we can take a quick look at the very early web pages from major companies that we know today. Okay, so believe it or not, here is a screenshot of Amazon's homepage back in the day, and also Apple's homepage. So it definitely looks a lot different today. Also, I mentioned how users don't really, they didn't really publish a lot of content online themselves in Web 1.0 days. And in fact, usually when they did, the website would look, a little bit like this. It's very common. So yeah, fun times. We've come a long way. Okay, so here is a graphic that also shows some of the differences between Web 1.0 and Web 2.0. It shows fewer web users overall in the 90s with Web 1.0, with content being published in one direction only, that is from public and private organizations directed at the users. Very few users were publishing content themselves. With Web 2.0, much more content is being published by users, and there are billions of users instead of just millions. So this contributes to more of a collective intelligence being generated through massive production and collaboration. Today, social media is not just Web 2.0. That's how it started, with most social media usage happening on the World Wide Web through a web browser. But today, a lot of social media use also happens through standalone apps on mobile devices. And 3.0 is also something that's creating more of a buzz. This isn't precisely defined yet, but involves artificial intelligence. So incorporating more natural language processing and machine learning, more 3D graphics. It's more ubiquitous, more users, and there's a convergence with the Internet of Things, or IoT for short. IoT has a major trend right now. Making so many of our products, smart, from lamps to watches to door locks. And all of these smart devices are becoming more connected and a broad network of data that's being collected and analyzed. So we're on the cusp of Web 3.0, and this is where social media currently sits. So we're still kind of in Web 2.0, but we're about to experience Web 3.0 on the horizon. Okay, so your book classifies social media into different types based on their core features and how people use them. Know that there isn't much consensus, even among social media scholars, how to classify social media. Every time a new social media app emerges, it can be difficult to classify it according to existing classification schemes. But the textbook offers a good overview of popular classifications and presents them in the order that they emerged. So we start with blogs, which actually came about in the late 1990s. Blog is short for weblog and allows users to post blog entries in a chronology. Readers can comment on these blog posts and can connect to other blogs. Common features are shown here, such as reverse chronology, meaning that the most recent posts show first. Blogs can be tagged and searched. Popular examples are shown, such as Blogger and Tumblr. Businesses can use blogs for marketing, sharing ideas, gathering feedback, and reaching customers directly without press filtering. Next to arrive on the scene were wikis. These are websites that anyone can edit directly and are used to collaborate on common tasks and to create a common knowledge base. So this isn't the same as just creating and using a shared document like Google Docs. Wikis have specific features like attribution. So every change made by a user is recorded and attributed to the user. There is a revision history with the possibility of rolling back changes to an earlier version. They're also searchable. Common examples are shown here, but it's missing the most popular online wiki, Wikipedia. Organizations will use wikis to create knowledge bases, such as capturing core aspects of a project or a how-to knowledge base. Wikis can help organizations create a collective intelligence and have a living knowledge repository. One concern of organizations is when knowledge is strictly held in the minds of employees. So when these employees leave the organization, they may take core knowledge with them. So wikis can help overcome this through capturing some of this core knowledge. Okay, so just a quick little sidebar. You've probably been presented with this question before, and your textbook talks about it too. Is it okay to use and cite Wikipedia for research? So Wikipedia does not contain original source content. Everything published on Wikipedia is generally cited from other sources. So let's take a look at an example. Okay, so I'm on Wikipedia, and here is the entry for the COVID-19 pandemic. And you can see it's quite lengthy. And this was co-created by several users around the world. And it's a living document, so it will continue to be updated and contributed to, and so it's going to have some of the most current information that you'll be able to find on the pandemic. And you'll see that there are citations, usually after every sentence. And so this is why it's important to know this is not original source content, so everything included here is cited from another source. So Wikipedia is actually a really great resource to study topics. There's actually been a lot of research that's been published that has shown that the information on Wikipedia on certain topics is just as accurate, if not more accurate and comprehensive than what you can find in encyclopedias and even textbooks. So for example, mental health disorders, there was a study that showed that what's contained on Wikipedia on different mental health disorders was actually more accurate and comprehensive than what you find in actual textbooks. So it can be a really great source to go to just to kind of learn about topics, but you should always go and visit the citations that are shown. One, to verify that the information presented here is accurately reflected, but then also, to use that original source as your citation if you find it useful. So here you can see that, you can look at the talk page, so you can see various dialogue and interactions that have gone on about this page from the different, contributors. And you can also create an account if you don't have one already. If you actually want to contribute to Wikipedia yourself, it's actually really easy to do. It's a WYSIWYG editor, so you can just, kind of directly edit the content. And so you might be a subject matter expert on certain topics, and you might find that the Wikipedia entry for that topic is maybe not as comprehensive as it could be. So then that would be, an opportunity for you to share your knowledge with the world. You can look at the history of any page. And so this is that idea of, attributions, and, you get to see exactly what has happened to this page, all of the different edits and versions. This is also where, you'd be able to roll back to an earlier version. If I go click on oldest, I can see that this page was originally created actually on January 8th, 2020. There's not an edit option on this page. So for really kind of important pages where there's a lot of interest, like the pandemic, that might be more restricted. So here it says that it's semi-protected. Only established registered users can edit it. And so then it goes on and there's more instructions that you'd have to read before editing this page. This is not the case for all pages on Wikipedia. In fact, if I go to Colorado State University's Wikipedia entry, you can directly edit that page without even having to log in. So in that case, it'll record your IP address. But you can see how easy it is to actually edit a page. You can publish your changes, look at a preview, save changes. I'm actually not going to edit this page. I don't know that I have anything extra to contribute, but I just wanted to show you just how easy it is to edit one of these pages. There's also Wikibooks, so a little different from just Wikipedia. And these are entire standalone books. And so here's an example of an XML book. And why did I pick this? It's because I did contribute to this book. In fact, this is a cover that I designed and published here. So for this one, I could even go back to the revision history and see that, the last time I did contribute here was actually sometime in 2006, which is a really long time ago. But I think wikis are really fascinating, and you can, browse for other books in Wikibooks, and also, like I said, on Wikipedia, if there are particular topics that you're interested in, you can contribute to those pages. If some don't even exist, you can create them from scratch and contribute that way. But it is a pretty cool resource, definitely one of the top used types of social media today. And so Wikipedia is actually a pretty solid source to use to learn about topics and find citations to sources that you should read to learn more about different topics, but you shouldn't cite Wikipedia itself directly as a source. Instead, you should cite the original sources, which are linked in the Wikipedia articles. Okay, so now we move on to electronic social networks. These are online communities that allow users to establish a personal profile, link to other profiles, sometimes called friends, share content, and communicate with members via messaging and posts. Most personal relationships are reciprocal in these networks, meaning that both parties agree to be friends. And it's used for, lots of different things, like discovering and reinforcing affiliations, identifying experts, virally share media. Has certain features like having a detailed personal profile, using multimedia, being able to, affiliate with groups, organizations, and other individuals. There's messaging built in, public discussions, and generally there are feeds that will show activity among different members. And so popular examples here would be, Facebook and LinkedIn. Microblogging is another popular type of social media. This is short, asynchronous messaging types of systems. So users send messages to followers, and those followers are not required to follow back. These are specifically characterized by having shorter character limits, so also tagging topics and having follower lists. A widely popular example is Twitter, but there are others that are being used increasingly by organizations such as Slack. So organizations use microblogging for lots of reasons, from real-time promotions, sharing time-sensitive information, engaging with customers, and for sourcing ideas, and even as a sales channel. So messaging services are another form of social media. These are used to communicate with individuals or groups of users using short format text, graphics, and video. So with this one, that multimedia piece is actually kind of important. Most messaging is done using mobile devices. So with these tools, you don't necessarily see people using these on browsers as much as you do, standalone apps on mobile devices. Communication can be public or private. Some focus on specific media type, so with Instagram, it's photos. It mentions Vine with videos, or Vine's not around anymore. So I would say TikTok, right, would maybe be an example of one that uses more videos. Others focus on, posts that might not last very long, so that they'll go away, typically right after they're read, like with Snapchat. So there are lots of examples here, mentioned Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok, but there are others as you see here. And the book also lists question and answer sites as a form of social media. This isn't typically included in classification schemes of social media, but the book mentions that these are, most used for knowledge sharing, discovery, learning, and reputation building. Some of the core features involve having, public member posted questions, permanent listings with a searchable repository, the community voting on the best or most appropriate answers, and reputation building, ranking, badging. And so one example is Quora. The textbook also mentions other social media like Reddit, right, but doesn't actually classify them under any of these categories. So where do you think Reddit would fit? Would it fit here? Would it fit in electronic social networks or somewhere else? And so that's why, I mentioned classification schemes don't always, capture all types of social media very cleanly, or they might even have different categories that aren't even in your book. So for example, one is, virtual social worlds. So one example of a virtual social world is Second Life. I'm not sure if you have heard of it. But the idea with virtual social worlds is that they are more immersive and more, realistic. You can create your own avatars. You can go interact with other people, and you see them through those other avatars. You can, go to dance clubs. You can just explore massive, worlds. And so we'll see if this might pick up again in maybe Web 3.0. Okay, so when it comes to social media, social networks are pretty important. Metcalfe's law is discussed in the textbook, and it's this idea that the value of a product or service increases as the number of users grow. So in short, more users on the network means the more value you'll gain. And so here's a visualization of a network that consists of nodes and lines that connect the nodes. In a social network, each node is a social actor, which can be an individual or an organization. And one of the key benefits of social media is the massive amounts of data generated, including the network data that can be mined and analyzed. And so this is one way that social networks can be analyzed, through a technique that is actually called social network analysis. And it has lots of metrics. This is just showing a few. This is very sort of simple depiction, but by using social network analysis, you can infer things like, where there might be kind of a key actor that's linking to otherwise disconnected networks. So that might be sort of a key actor to focus on, as well as these types of connections, because again, if this connection is broken, then a couple of different networks will become disconnected. You can also analyze things like, prestige and centrality. So just really interesting stuff that you can do with social network analysis. Also really cool visualizations that you can produce. So I thought you all might be interested in this. This was something done at Northwestern University with YellowDig. So they were looking at a complete class using YellowDig, and they were able to kind of visualize the network of users and activities involved, and they were able to identify some students who were maybe creating content but not engaging with other peers very much, as well as seeing, those who were really engaged with others. Okay, so your book also talks about wisdom of the crowds as another benefit of using social media. And so this is when a group of individuals collectively has more insight than a single or small group of trained professionals. And so the book also lists different criteria that would have to be in place for a crowd to be smart, and wise, and be able to problem solve in this way. And, here's one example, and this is of a patient that came into the hospital and had thumb impaled with a saw blade, and the physicians used a social media app called Sermo to basically, post the issue. They posted a picture, and they solicited feedback from other physicians on, the best way to remove this saw blade from this patient's thumb. And within minutes, different physicians started to reply, and they ended up using one of the novel approaches suggested, which was, using a straw, cutting that straw lengthwise, inserting it under the teeth of the blade and sliding out the protected blade to minimize the tissue damage. And so, this is an example of how doctors can use tools like this and tap into wisdom of the crowds and, save thumbs and a whole lot more. And so your book has other examples like this that you should check out because they're really interesting. Okay, so another concept your book talks about is crowdsourcing. So this is the act of taking a job traditionally performed by a designated agent, usually an employee, and outsourcing it to an undefined, generally large group of people in the form of an open call. So sometimes these can involve large efforts on the part of the participants answering the call, or the efforts can actually be quite small, sometimes referred to as micro jobs or micro tasks. Shown here is the Waze Map app, which leverages crowdsourcing to report, real-time traffic data. The chapter also discusses many other interesting examples of crowdsourcing that you should check out, from Mechanical Turk to competitions and contests launched by different companies to solve complex business problems. And, when there is kind of, large complex business problems that are being solved, this is crowdsourcing, but it's also leveraging, wisdom of the crowds. Another topic your book talks about is collaborative consumption. While not a social media per se, it shares similar traits in terms of involving collaboration using online tools, except it's not, content that's being shared, it's products and services that are being shared. And so collaborative consumption is when participants share access to products and services rather than having ownership. These shared resources can be owned by a central service provider, as in the case of Zipcar, or provided by a community that pools available resources. And some examples are Airbnb and Uber. These models have been, pretty disruptive in several industries. You can even see in the Airbnb promotion that it says, forget hotels. So can you think of other examples of collaborative consumption or the pros and cons of these? Okay, so your chapter doesn't talk about this, but I think it's really fascinating how regular social media users can become so popular and build massive platforms that they actually become millionaires. So there are actually people in younger generations who now aspire to be social media celebrities or influencers as their career aspirations, which is, I think an interesting trend. Okay, so here's a quick summary of the various ways that organizations can use social media, and this is not a comprehensive list by any means, but organizations will use social media for, contests and promotions, analytics, both internal and external. So that means that, they might even have employees within their company, or organization that use social media, that's implemented by the organization. So they're able to analyze some of that data, do like sentiment analysis of their employees, try to see how satisfied they are in their jobs. But also it's often used for external purposes. So analyzing data posted by customers or potential customers, for example. It's also used for knowledge sharing, customer support and response, customer engagement, viral marketing, targeted marketing, human resources management. So lots of organizations, as part of their recruiting process, will even go and look at applicants' social media and try to assess if they would be a good fit for their company. And organizations also use social media for reputation management, just so kind of promoting their image, and if there's ever some sort of crises, they'll use social media to try to protect their image as well. And a quick note about viral marketing. This doesn't always pan out for organizations, so organizations have to be really smart about how they approach this. Okay, so don't know if you've ever seen this commercial here. This was a viral marketing campaign by Quiznos that absolutely went viral. So it was successful from that perspective, but it didn't lead to increased traffic to their stores, unfortunately. And so they ended up pulling the campaign. And, part of it was also that, people either loved or hate this campaign. So some thought the Spung monkeys were really quirky and cute, and others thought they looked like rats, and they were a little disgusted. So anyways, this is an example of a viral marketing campaign that actually didn't quite work out. So I said, companies really have to be smart about their viral marketing campaigns. Okay, so your book also talks about some of the negatives associated with social media use, and this is definitely not an exhaustive list either. It talks about griefers, online trolls, fake news and information, privacy concerns. The book doesn't talk about the shallowing hypothesis, but this is something that is associated with social media, and it's just this idea that, the ultra brief, kind of back and forth types of text messaging that we do, even on, microblogging sites, basically is rewiring our brains to be more shallow, both morally and cognitively. And unfortunately, there is some research that will support this. And the book also talks about sock puppets, astroturfing, viral online outrage, and reputation taint. And so we're going to actually talk about some of these more in the next video. So we'll talk about how organizations can use social media for engagement, but also how to respond to crises and issues.